increase hearing at the PUC, just found out this afternoon, approved by the PUC, going into effect. So here we are. What next?
Yes, I mean, I was very disappointed to hear this afternoon that the Public Utilities Commission voted for National Grid's proposed rate hike. There's been a lot of work pushing them to try to take a bolder stand, to stand up and say we're going to put people over corporate profits, and unfortunately that didn't happen today. As you said, that doesn't mean the fight's over. That just means it's getting started, and there's a whole lot of work to do moving forward. I'd say on a range of different areas. Number one is we need to be making sure that we're pushing forward with policies that will protect our most vulnerable folks from this rate hike. And that's, by the way, that's not just on the regulatory side, that's the legislative side. You know, my colleagues in the General Assembly, we need to step up on policies like a percentage of income payment plan. That's something that the George Biley Center has been really pushing for, saying that, you know, access to power is a basic human need. We should be treating it like that. We shouldn't be treating it like a privilege just for those who can afford it. We should be saying that it is unacceptable when a working family or when an elderly Rhode Islander gets their power shut off, and we need to be doing policies like the IPP to protect it. So there's that front. There's the front of just, and this is a long-term fight, but we need greater accountability and oversight over our utility. Right now, I don't think that exists, and there's a whole lot of work to do there. I've introduced a number of different pieces of legislation over the years, things like saying that our utility should not be using our ratepayer dollars for expenditures like advertising, like lobbying expenses, like legal expenses, to sue folks when they're trying to have new energy alternatives. So there's a lot of work there. And then the third, and this is a big task, but a lot of us believe we need to fundamentally rethink and reform our basic business model for the utility. When I got very concerned about this proposed rate hike from hearing from just a lot of my constituents and neighbors who were reaching out, sharing their concerns and fears about how this could impact their lives. But alongside the concerns, I've noticed there's also a lot of frustration by folks who just feel like right now our energy system is not designed for the public good. It's more designed for the benefit of the few. When you've got a multinational corporation that makes billions of dollars a year in profits, not revenue, in profits, that is allowed to pass all costs along to consumers, that has a regulatory process where it feels like the fox is guarding the hen house. And so how can we rethink that? And that's particularly pertinent, I think, when it comes to this energy transition that we need in our state, to transition from a system where we are completely dependent on out-of-state fossil fuels, which we have no control over their cost, to a system that's going to work a lot better for Rhode Islanders, where we have developed some independence by really investing in our local clean energy industry and energy efficiency. Long term, I think that's the only way we're actually going to bring down costs. And right now, the utility is set up so that there is just immense conflicts of interest. Making that energy transition is not in the interest of the bottom line of National Grid right now. And so how do we shift that so that we can create an energy economy that works for all Rhode Islanders, not just for the folks at the top or the CEO of National Grid?
What do you think, Lucy, in here, about the Empower RI approach to allow Rhode Islanders to go on and see if they can find alternatives?
You know, for me, that hasn't been my focus as much. I think that there are ways where increasing competition can be good, but my concern on that front is we're talking now about unregulated power suppliers. So National Grid, obviously I have a whole lot of concerns with them, but at least there's some form of regulation. It's not what it needs to be. And so I don't exactly, and I'll admit I don't have the best understanding, but I think there's some concern around opening up to unregulated, untested folks, and whether there might be some benefits to that, but is that really the systemic response that we need. The other piece of it is obviously whenever you're talking about increasing competition, that's going to work better for people who have more information and more access, and worse for some of the more vulnerable folks that we're talking about. So for me, when I'm thinking about how do we increase competition, I'm thinking about policies that can transition from this monopoly utility focused on large-scale power plant scale energy generation to more democratic, local, distributed generation. In the legislature, one of my big priorities has been expanding net metering and opening up remote net metering. Last year, I was able to pass legislation to expand net metering to residential, to affordable housing. This year, we expanded it further to nonprofits, educational institutions, etc. And so that's the kind of thing where folks can really invest in renewable energy installations in ways that open up the access of the benefits of renewables, so that we're producing energy all throughout the grid in small ways that are actually democratically controlled, instead of having to rely on this sort of giant behemoth that we can't really control. We saw with the PUC today that there's not really the public accountability there. Instead, having distributed generation that's throughout the grid, where I'm invested in a community solar farm that's down the road along with a bunch of my neighbors. That's the kind of policies that we've actually had a lot of success in moving forward, and we're seeing megawatts on, and I need to be taking that to scale in our state, because again, ultimately, Rhode Island's at the end of the supply chain. We talk about how we have got high prices, and we do, but that's not going to change as long as we are where we are. We don't produce coal in Rhode Island. We don't produce natural gas. We don't produce oil. We're never going to have it right nearby so that it's a low cost. We're always going to be buying it from far away, putting our dollars, sending them to Pennsylvania, to Texas, to Saudi Arabia, wherever. I think we should be making sure that as many of our energy dollars are actually staying here in Rhode Island, going into our local economy, going to Rhode Island businesses, Rhode Island workers, and we're going to do that by really investing in this independent local energy, clean energy and energy efficiency industry, which is growing by leaps and bounds. It's not like we don't have something really powerful to start from. It's seen higher growth in jobs, in megawatts, etc., than almost any. So there's a lot there. We're talking about good paying jobs for the most part. These are family supporting jobs. That's where I think we want to be putting our energy into moving forward.
Do you think this will be a big issue in the next assembly session before I start talking about September? In 2018, do you see this really being more front and center than it's been since you've been there?
I think so. I think that the attention and energy that's gone into this fight today, even if we were unsuccessful in stopping the hike from going forward, it certainly creates a stronger foundation to continue this work. Again, there's been a number of us in the legislature who have been sort of hammering away on these things for a while, but having it be elevated, having it be easier to talk to our colleagues and get more folks on board, I'm hoping that we're going to be able to make some progress.
So usually during the summer times, it's usually a slow political cycle if it's not an election year, usually. But here we are. I wish the summer had been slower. Was not a slow summer. Right now, down in Senate District 13, there is a weed seat. We'll find out the results of that most likely this evening. But we're looking at September. After this assembly session, what do you think next month holds?
After September 19th, you're saying, or what happens?
What happens?
Okay.
What happens?
So first of all, I am so relieved that we are coming back, that we do have a budget right now. Obviously, I was very outspoken in wanting us to come back. I think there's some very important legislation that was left before getting over the finish line at the end of last session. As you know, one of my top priorities this year was passing earned sick time. I was very grateful for Go Local Prov, taking a stance on that. I think it's a critical issue for thousands and thousands of Rhode Islanders who is between, their job on the one hand and taking care of their health, taking care of their sick kid. That's a choice that no one should be forced to make, and right now a lot of people are. So we worked really hard throughout the session to craft a policy to try to bring different stakeholders together to overcome some of the knee-jerk operation and really engage in conversations and try to get to a policy place that people could be happy about. And I think we did it. And then we had the session explosion at the end there. So I'm feeling very optimistic that when we come back on the 19th, we are going to reconcile the few small differences between our House bill and our Senate bill, and we're going to get sick time through, and we're going to be able to say that there's a basic guarantee in the state of Rhode Island that folks can earn the sick time they need to take care of themselves and their family. There's a few other important pieces of legislation as well. There's the domestic violence disarmament bill, which folks like Rep. Teresa Tanzi and so many activists, Moms Demand Action, Rhode Island Coalition Against Gun Violence, so many folks have been working on for years and years, and it still flabbergasts me that something as common sense as taking the guns away from convicted domestic abusers would require such a gargantuan effort, but it has, and I'm so proud and inspired by the folks who've led that fight. I'm proud to have supported and tried to play a piece in it, and so I feel very confident that we're going to get that through. And then there's a range of other bills that I think that the House and the Senate are still discussing, and I don't have a clear sense of the full agenda.
Well, again, we're continuing to keep all eyes on it. And kind of final question, as where things stand with what had happened with the PAW Stocks, looking at APEX, sort of the last-minute legislative introduction after saying there wasn't enough time, but let's give them some more time. What's your sense on what's in the best interest of Rhode Islanders as far as the PAW Stocks are concerned?
That's a great question. It's one that I don't have a hard and fast answer to right now. I want to see the full proposal and sort of where it can go and be stretched to. From my perspective, I think the people of Rhode Island, and I am with them on this, have made very clear, I've sent a strong message that we're sick and tired of backroom deals where the public dollar is being used to subsidize private interests for private profits. And I think that any policy or proposal that has any semblance of that is not going to have a very good shot, because a lot of people are concerned about it, and they should be. At the same time, I also, I know that the PAW Stocks are an incredibly important piece of Rhode Island's culture and our tradition and our economy, and just recreation is important, and so families have grown up on that, and it's still an affordable piece of recreation. So we do want to make it a priority to try to keep that piece of Rhode Island history here. And if there's a way to get a deal that can do that without breaking that first rule that I said, then I would hope we can work it out. But I don't have a clear enough sense of where the sides are at to know if that's possible or not right now.
Well, again, one of the many issues that we're continuing to keep an eye on here, along with others. Again, the House back in September 19th, PUC today approving 53% rate hike for National Grid. Having a conversation here with Representative Aaron Regunberg sort of about what's next. He laid out sort of what we might expect from the Assembly session next year when it goes back in. Any kind of final thoughts you want to leave with folks? I mean, those folks who turned out at the PUC today, the folks who signed on to that letter, that were really in opposition. I know you went through a myriad of issues, but kind of final thoughts to them. That coalition's there, and it's not going anywhere.
Right. I mean, for the hundreds and hundreds of folks who signed our petition, for the dozens and dozens and dozens of folks who came out this morning and shared their stories, for all of my neighbors and constituents who've shared their stories with me about their concerns and frustrations with this proposal. Obviously, this fight hasn't ended. It's just beginning, and it's a long-term fight. Again, creating a utility system where Rhode Islanders, where everyday working people are front and center, and corporate profits are not the overwhelming priority for how we make decisions. That needs to be the long-term goal. And there's a lot of policies that can get there. It's not a huge technical challenge, I think, to get there. We know what we need to do. It's a political challenge. It's how do we build the power, how do we build how do we bring community members together in order to have enough of a voice that we can make sure that is what our decision makers in state government are willing to support.
Well, as you said, the fight is just beginning. I wanted to get you in here kind of firsthand at what happened with the PUC. Again, the decision made today. We'll continue to follow the issue moving forward. We'll continue to see what happens at the Assembly in September. But Aaron Regunberg, I appreciate your coming in today.